Devyani, way back in 1991, you passed out, if I'm not mistaken. It
Right.
was a time when we were supposed, the teachers were those who were as repositories of knowledge, those be oozing out of confidence because of the facts that they had at their disposal. So there was a competition amongst the teachers when I joined, for example, to establish myself as a good teacher. I had to try and get the best possible information together and to disseminate that information to you in a manner in which you could grasp it. And then, because that information was not readily available at that time. So it was the depth of the teacher's knowledge, which was very important. The depth, as in the mastery of content and the mastery of information, and also the mastery of delivering that information, disseminating that information, bringing it out for the students. Now, as time passed and as we came across new technology, new methods, the information revolution, the internet, the search engines, and so on and so forth, the breadth of education or teachers' knowledge became very important. Now, what do I mean by breadth of education? Cultivating competencies and communication skills, right? Transferable communication skills. How do you transfer it? Then, how do you engage the student in critical thinking and analytical reasoning? That is also very important. How do you engage the student in critical thinking and analytical reasoning? So, besides the clarity of thought and expression that was required for a teacher to strike that chord with the student where a bridge could be formed between the content provider and the receiver, it was also important for him to get into that intellectual engagement process, right? Where development should not be restricted to the knowledge which is being disseminated by you, but also by others, right?
Very rightly
So,
said, sir. Very rightly. I mean, you've been an inspiration. Yeah.
One sentence, just let me conclude this, because then I'm sorry if I have overshot, but just one sentence that, you know, now it's not about only a standardized text being remembered and clearing exams right from the time you enter a college till such time as you pass out. It is about competence development, developing competencies based on rigorous interchange, imagination, innovation, skills. These are the three very important tools: imagination, innovation, and skills. These are the three important goals and tools both. When tools become goals, sometimes it becomes easier, sometimes it becomes difficult. So that is where we stand today. Thank you.
Over to you, Dr. Ameeta.
Thank you so much, Devyani. And what I would like to say is when I see Neerav, and we go back a long way, and thank you so much for having me here. And of course, Jayshree, my old friend, we look after schools in the same city, except she owns the schools. I look after my school. So, and she runs some...
You're an institution in your own self. When, I mean, you're one person, probably goddess in education. Who has
please, I'm not at all. I thank you again, Devyani, for all your wonderful words. What I would like to say, and I would like to start off by saying is that, you know, children are not really bothered about what you're teaching. They really want to know. They want to know who you are. Not what you teach, but who you are. And that's very essential, because we live in a goldfish bowl when we are in a classroom. And every action that we make, every conversation that we have, the language that we use gets deconstructed into the psyche of the child's mind. Anybody can teach content. A tuition center can teach content. I'm not saying that content is not necessary, It's extremely important. And that's our jobs. As teachers, it's our job. If we don't know our craft, but that is not the only thing, and that is not the paramount thing. So I think what is essential that we have to look at learning is that how do we delve into children? But before we delve into what children want, I think we need to fix ourselves. How do we delve into ourselves? I think the most important thing is to change yourself before you want your child to change in a classroom. So whether it is a 21st century skill that's so proficiently and so well Neerav brought out, which we integrate into classrooms, or whether it is the concept of the way that we transact discipline. I think the essence of reaching children is believing in them, is making them visible, is ensuring that the last child in your classroom has respect, and that we all work together at different levels, and each child is special, and each child is an entity. I think that is the success of a teacher. But what is happening is that there's a very interesting sociological term called the routinization of charisma. When something charismatic becomes a routine, it becomes a bore. So when a young teacher comes into school, she's energized, she's excited, but then she gets into the whole nuts and bolts of covering the syllabus instead of uncovering it. And then she gets into that routine of walking in and the children standing up and wishing her and getting on. And there's no purpose and passion left. And the worst thing that can kill you is boredom that children feel. And that can kill learning. Because learning has to happen around joy. It has to happen around an understanding of oneself. It has to happen around student advocacy and student voice. If there's no student advocacy and voice, there is no learning, because then learning is detached from the learner. And the moment learning is detached from the learner, then there are two different entities and we are conversing in silos. Learning has to be seamless. Seamless, I beg your pardon. It has to be seamless. Learning becomes a habit. It becomes a habit. So that every time a child picks up a book, or picks up a text, or picks up a comic, or goes out to a museum, he's curious, he's interested. She wonders, is there some kind of a mind map beyond this? And she learns, or he learns at multiple levels. At multiple levels. So if a teacher can bring in the fact that if you can teach mathematics in a cricket field, or if you can teach mathematics in Maharaja Agrasen Bauli in Delhi, through the angles and through the triangles, and let the child believe that you're doing maths, you're doing sociology, you're doing a water system, you're engaging with the history of that era. And so it becomes totally interdisciplinary that Neerav talked about. And I'm so pleased that the NEP has brought in these aspects. With that, I will rest my case for now.
Okay. Very well said, ma'am. You never know where a teacher's influence ends. And also that the question that children have to have the joy in learning. It is then an unconditional bond, an equation is created, and then over to Dr. Jayshree.
Thank you, Devyani. Thank you, Edudevs. And it's great to be with Ameeta and Neerav. So lovely. Thank you once again. So for my children, my students, I often believe that learn to understand your passion, your perseverance, and find a purpose in education. I believe in integrity and having a strong moral fiber. Do away with plagiarism. Create an honor code for yourself. In life, you will have two paths, the difficult but the right, and maybe the easy one. The right path will be shrouded with challenges and sometimes even with a lot of pain, but be strong enough to follow it. Create your dreams and see that you nurture them into making it a reality. I believe in having a love for lifelong learning. Education is not a destination, it is a journey. The process is always more important than the product. I believe in excellence. Never bring down your own standards. It may require struggle and strife, but that is what eventually will create success for you. And for my beloved teachers, the soldiers, I've always told them that be first among equals. Every child is our guru. Create an environment of lifelong learning, of curiosity, of joy, that they're anxious to come back to your class. And that only a good teacher can do. Involve your children in research, in innovation, in their own unique perspective. Believe in actions, they speak louder than words. So become exemplary. Along with your IQ, elevate the SQ, the social quotient and the emotional quotient in your children. You must imagine the impossible and make it possible. The best leaders are those who create leaders amongst themselves by trusting them and letting them blossom. So all of us must struggle to create more leaders as we have more children who are wanting to be a part of your school. So I stand to say a little full stop here.
Thank you so much, Jayshree. Very well said. Become exemplary. Become your students' role model. Excellent. Moving on to Dr. Wattal, I have a question for you here. As John Dewey says, we're all instructors to realize that the quality of mental process, not the production of correct answers, is the measure of educative growth. Something hardly less than a revolution in teaching would be worked. And this quote comes alive when we look at our current new education policy. So how do you think that the NEP 2020 would impact the child development in India education system, and to what extent it will be different from its previous document? After all, NCF 2009, the various NCF, they too did talk about a child-centric education. We also had something called CCE, which did deviate from a traditional system of pedagogical delivery. Though, still we stand somewhere away from the expectations. I would really like to hear your views on how the new education policy is going to now make a difference to the child development and the overall education system.
Thank you for that, Devyani. You're right, there have been so many policies across this country for years and years. I think the only problem, because they all say the same thing in different ways, from the Kothari Commission, and Neerav will agree with me, from the Kothari Commission onwards, whether it is the latest when we talk about the National Curriculum Framework 2005, it was drafted out by the likes of people like Professor Yashpal, who's an extremely progressive, educated philosopher. I would say that the only problem is the implementation. So I think what is most essential is that we must ensure that we implement it. But I think it's come at a very right time, this policy, as far as implementation is concerned, for the simple reason that it has come at a time when schools have to adjust their role, because there are certain societal demands and expectations where we have to transform ourselves in identity and in the way we look and in the way schools look at society. So this policy is going to create these new connections between student learnings and observations outside the textbook. And we need that because the new generation cannot be taught in the manner that we have been taught in the past, even till yesterday. Because the kind of skills that the market needs today, the market asks you, it advertises, you can't even take on 2 people. So there's something terribly wrong in what we are teaching in the university and in the schools. Because why is it that we talk about unemployment, but when we enter the market, they say there are jobs, but then we don't know who to take on. So somewhere there is a vacuum in what livelihood wants from a person and what he's actually being taught to deliver, which means that all that we are delivering is basically content, and content around a couple of 5 or 6 or 8 books that we move around, especially in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I think it's a wonderful policy which will allow children to find a place in the global context, because the way we look at learning through the NEP is going to be something which is very international in its concept. It's going to make children think conceptually. It's going to make children understand and apply real life situations. It's going to make children be tracked independently. It's not as though it's a factory. It's not a factory model. 40 people are put into a classroom and we learn in that manner. So there are innumerable ways in which children will be taught and looking at different aspects of learning. So naturally children will engage with interdisciplinary learning. They will engage with 21st century skills, which hopefully will come out of the cupboards and the books and come into the transactions, because skills, values, competencies are all interdependent. And this is what is going to come out. And of course, the content is going to be lessened. The concept is going to become larger. So instead of having 30 topics in biology, hopefully you will have 8. But the concepts will remain, because what is most important is the phenomena-based model. It's a concept-based model. So children can apply concepts, which I just mentioned to you earlier. They can apply the concepts to real-life situations. I'll rest my case. Thank you.
Ma'am, it's a very interesting topic, and there is one question I would want to say, that you spoke at length about the policy. And yes, the policy shows a lot of hope for change. Where and how much would an educator will have to change their style? What effort by the school management, principals, and what is their own effort? Because a very key link between the policy and the student, there is that very important link, which is the educator. So please, ma'am, we would love to hear you out on this.
You know, there are several points here. Firstly, I think the parents will have to change their mindset. That's a very important thing. Because the success is 360 degrees. It's the parent, it's the home who believes that in spite of the policy offering you fluidity in subjects, offering you a flexibility in choice, but if the parents continue to say, but we want PCM and PCB, then we're going to be in that mold. The point is, mindsets have to be completely blown away. A child has to enjoy the fact and not be psychologically pressured that, you know, how do I take classical music and mathematics? Interestingly, they're interrelated, the notes. Because when you do, and Neerav would probably tell you, I think, Neerav, you're a mathematician or you're an English teacher? I can't recollect because you were always with English. So, yeah. So, anyway, so the point I'm making here, is, one is the parent mindset. 2 is the dissemination of this policy across the country. Because what are the teachers' skill sets? What are the skill sets of principals? They'll have to be looked at. But nobody has said that this policy is going to start tomorrow. Everybody is saying they've given us a certain time plan. They've given us over 10 years in which we are going to look at it. And there's a lot of background work that is happening. As far as the CBSE is concerned, which is a highly progressive board, they have these wonderful centers of excellence where training goes on. There are innumerable states in the country where a lot of training goes on in these states. And there are some very, very progressive states who are doing some fantastic work with their schools. So I think everybody is ready. It's the nicest thing is the policy has come at a time when the ground is fertile. Now we have to create fertile minds. So teacher training from block level to district level to every single level, because the last child has to be met. The government has to ensure that it lays down the technology 2.0 facilities through which we are able to talk right now. The internet, the e-tablets, reaching the last child in our country, optical fibers. Otherwise, how do we go forward? How do we take it forward? Because technology is exceptional at tracking children, at assessing children, at ensuring that each child is found, in spite of schools of brick and mortar, because hybrid learning is going to be an integral part of teaching. So you have the teacher training, you have the technology, you have the parent mindset, and the biggest thing is that the universities will have to change. Schools can't change in silos. What's the point of me doing, and I've suffered in any university. What is the point that my child does media studies and does physics, and the university says, I'm sorry, I don't have place for this combination. Or even for physical education or home science. So I'm not going to change anything until the university changes, because my child is going to be affected by that admission. Now, in order to get rid of this 99% and 100%, the university also has to bring in some kind of testing systems and admission tests. So we can't work in silos. We have to work seamlessly for this policy to move forward. And there's a huge place. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no.
Please.
Please. Because it was very interesting. And ma'am, on one side, we have policies like this. And on the other, we have marks where students get 100 on 100, 500 on 500. So do you think that this policy will be more effective for an IB curriculum than because CBSE will have to change 360 degrees. We are all, and we cannot shirk that, we are all about marks. Every school is trumpeting about itne 100 aa gaye, itne ye aa gaye. Oh, you know, that there the vicious circle starts. And here we are all making, the best of the brains go into making policies. But ultimately, for example, the policy talks about bringing back 2 crore people of the 2 crore dropout students. This kind of, these small little things, there I see a lot of implementational gaps, which even if we want, and somewhere I see IB schools much more ready to take on this. So I know I'm being very debated, but honestly, this was coming straight from my heart and I wanted to ask.
See, Devyani, IB schools are already doing it. So let's not get into that. So that is not our business. And every child cannot afford an IB school. We're looking at a country. We're looking at a country where nobody has a monopoly over suffering. Nobody has a monopoly over lack of education. Nobody should have a monopoly over lack of opportunity and equity. So I think the policy has come at a fantastic time. And I would like to tell you, and now that the awards are over, that I was one of the jurors on the national award selection. And I cannot tell you that I saw the most amazing teachers in the States. They were doing the most fantastic work. And it was work which was hands-on. They were practitioners. They were doing all sorts of research-based, project-based learning. They were doing competency-based learning. And it was fantastic. And this kind of teaching is happening in most progressive schools, whether it is CBSE or whether it is state, all the way from nursery to 8th. Because nobody messes with anybody in those levels. Where we have to look at this policy is in grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. Because if India is going to be looking at PISA, and that is what we're looking at, the last time we had a PISA score, we came second last thanks to Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan not been there, would have been last. So if we as a country are saying that our children should start looking at PISA and being assessed, because that's why we want our place in the nations, in more developed nations, then naturally the policy has to, you can't have teaching at one level and assessment at another level. Because the kind of assessment that happens in PISA is about your competency. It's about your attitudes. It's about how you dovetail your competency with real life situations. So the question of rote learning does not arise in the questions that come up in PISA. So the fact that we have gone forward with that, and our Prime Minister has also said that, there's no question of us now going backwards and saying, what will the CBSE do? What will the state do? The CBSE is a fantastic vehicle for change. It has 22,000 schools. It can use this platform, and it did it. And a lot of schools benefited. And even today, it's got something like 60 manuals that it has brought out. And schools are working in it through hubs of learning. It's working it through joyful learning, experiential learning. So we just have to have hope. And as educators, I have a lot of hope. And I hope to push it as much as I can, at least in rural India. I plan to work there and push it.
Great, great, ma'am. Excellent. This was so much. I was waiting to hear you out on this. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, there is a lot of hope, and we are going to make it happen. Why not? Moving on to my next question is to Dr. Malay Neerav. Sir, as an educator, you've probably noticed that the profession has undergone significant change in the last few years. With the growth of artificial intelligence and the plethora of resources available, like via web apps, websites, teachers are no longer considered experts when it comes to measuring the domain knowledge. In this context, some are beginning even to wonder whether the expertise of face-to-face teachers is on its way becoming obsolete. Coupled with the global teacher shortage is a serious concern with grave implications, as we all are aware of. It can take on independent teachers, and so simultaneously the development of robotic personalities that can take an independent teacher's role, despite strong opinions that robots will not be able to replace humans in the classroom of the future. Yet, when it comes to deliverance, when it comes to so many other things, robotic personalities will probably. So what is your take on this?
Well, Devyani, before I answer your question and tell you about my take on this kind of technology versus human intervention, let me first add a little supplementary to what Dr. Wattal has just said. It is a problem of mindsets. It is a problem of deep psychological inhibitions and the psyche which needs to be changed. But at the cost of becoming unpopular, let me tell you that this change is required a lot in the teachers. And that is where the question that you have asked will get answered. Let me tell you how. Yeah. See, the problem is that we as teachers were told that you tell the student you are a good teacher if you are able to tell the student how to think. That is how you become a good teacher. Yeah. What the teacher does is telling the student what to think. The moment you tell the student what to think and not how to think, the problem gets magnified because the student is not losing interest. So with technology coming in, for example, Google Devata, as it's called, and search engines, the problem remains the same. What is the role of the teacher? The role of the teacher is not in telling the student as to what is there to be seen. That those days are gone. What to see is finished. It is where to see, where to look. That is what is important. And that is where I don't see any competition between technology and human intervention. I see a functional complementarity between teacher and technology. There's a functional complementarity between the two. So from a stage like the times when we started teaching, from the times when we were told that an encyclopedia on your table is the best teacher, or a sage on the stage kind of a thing who comes and delivers and goes out and he leaves you, when he leaves the class, you are spellbound that look at the man's knowledge. From there, he changed to be a guide on the side, a facilitator, who is using not only her or his own skills, but technological skills to engage students in first-hand learning experience through hands-on training project or experiential learning. That is where the role of the teacher becomes complementary to technology. Technology is a tool, helps in acquiring knowledge. Let me tell you, Devyani, the last I want to make here is that the educator is needed to help the student apply his knowledge, being the workforce ready out of the student, to get the best of the out of the student. It is not the job of the teacher anymore to give the best to the student. It is the job of the teacher to get the best out of the student. That is where what Dr. Wattal was saying is all that difference which a teacher has to replicate, a teacher has to make. That he has to reach the last student, the last of the backbench class, to ensure that he feels encouraged, inspired to ask questions and takes the help of technology. Don't look upon technology as a competitor. There are jobs which cannot be done by technology alone. Artificial intelligence and mechanical studies cannot motivate. They cannot turn your emotions and establish an emotional connect between the student's emotions and the teacher's emotions. There are several things which the teacher will have to do. And for that, motivation and engagement to a level where the bridge is formed between the teacher, the student through technology, that is something that we need to do. And that is what is aimed at in the new education policy. So last point to make by giving you an example. I was asked by my then Vice Chancellor, who had introduced the system of four-year program, undergraduate program, which was the new education policy. I don't mind saying that it is a replica of the same. I went to 47 university colleges. I met 9,770 students. And all of them, not one, all of them were very happy with this idea. They should get out of this mode of brick and mortar, that there should be some You see, there were children who had seen a laptop for the first time, and they were saying that, look, this laptop is something changes the entire classroom discussions, because we are not interested in knowing what happens when A squared plus B squared happens. No, that is not the point. The point is your analytical abilities, your reasoning, your critical acumen, you are encouraged to ask questions, and you are encouraged to learn through your own experiences, through experiments hands-on. Technology helps you in being a facilitator. It helps you in being a person on your side. It does not create any problems for you to be a facilitator. Of course, it becomes you to adopt it. You still consider yourself as a sage on the stage.
Yeah, very true. And you were, during our conversations, talking about the cognitive abilities.
Yes.
Which, yeah. So would you please enlighten us on that as well?
Yeah, look, there are certain things. IBM Wattal, the company which is looking at artificial intelligence, the major issue is how to read the human mind. That is something where the student-teacher can only see this problem, how to read a student's mind. What does he need? What are his strong points? What are his weaknesses? What will he like? What won't he like? How do you force him? Why do you force him, Why do you force him to do something which he doesn't want to do? Let me tell you honestly, that in this class of 60 students in history honors that I teach in St. Stephen's, out of those 60, nearly 45 students are those 75% who are not doing history by choice. They were told St. Stephen's is the best, department is the best, it will assure you a career, you will get into anything that you like. They were told by a so-called counselor in their schools who came and said, this is how you can do well, and they came and they're sitting there. Now, what do I do with them? Well, I teach a paper called Religion and Religiosity. So to people from physics and mathematics, that paper also I teach. I find that class engaging better than the history honors students who are told to talk about the decline of the Mughal factors of the decline of the Mughal Empire, right? Yeah. So this is what I'm saying, that technology should not be seen as a competitor. It should be seen as a supplementary necessity which will make life much easier for the students and the teachers. And my advice to teachers is that the teachers will have to break that glass ceiling. They will have to stop thinking that they are not there to change, that they're there, that they know everything. They will have to get away from this whiteboard and sketch pen, or whatever it's called. Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you so much. And I do agree that the relevance of the teacher will never be undermined. Thank you, sir. Moving on to Dr. Jayshree, as I was talking to you even before the webinar started, that I was watching your journey over your YouTube video, and I was reading about it. And honestly speaking, I was very inspired because it showed sheer passion to disseminate education. How do you think your own experience has helped you become one of the greatest inspirational ideals for a student, for a student teacher, for so many around? How has your journey transformed you from a teacher to an entrepreneur?
Thank you, Devyani. It's very humbling that, yes, you did watch my YouTube videos. They've been, they'll say, jo nikalta hai na, it touches you. So I come from a very humble background, and I grew up in a small city of Haryana called Sirsa. And I went to an ordinary school because, and all that we were taught was, do ekam do duni char bolo bachcho. That's the kind of exposure that I had. And then I was sent to a boarding school at the age of 8. I didn't know how to speak in English. I was clueless in class. I almost used to sleep, and I failed.
I heard that.
I failed. But my principal was so compassionate that my father wrote to her, not knowing English does not mean not having the intelligence or the capacity to learn. Allow her. And she did. I was mocked at, belittled, but my josh and jabba and a bit of pagalpan, that I'm going to beat them all. Wait till I don't learn English better than everybody around me. I had this grit and this determination and the fire in my belly not to give up. I started reading small storybooks in English, tried to hone my skills. I finally crossed the English channel, the English language channel. The same girl who failed at the age of 8 topped Delhi University in her college. So what I want to tell everybody that don't be scared of failures, because if you haven't failed, you haven't tried, and if you haven't tried, you haven't learned. Have the spirit never to give up, no matter how difficult your circumstances may be. If you look at people around, say Abdul Kalam or say Obama or even our own Prime Minister, they've all come from very humble backgrounds, didn't go to the elitist schools. But look at the trajectory. that has been of resilience and the spirit of never giving up and nothing is impossible. Difficult times and circumstances do not decide your destiny. I started in this field of education with one child in my garage. And today I have over 10,000 students under my tutelage at the Jayshree Periwal group of schools. We do the CBSE, we do the IGCSE, and we do the IB. I want to tell parents, don't lay a bed of roses for your children. Don't be overindulgent. Don't be those helicopter bulldozers. Parents always protecting them from obstacles. Let your children struggle. Let these experiences guide them, help them, motivate them to overcome challenges. Only problems lead to problem solving. Protecting children creates dependency. Don't do that for your children. Look how Krishna and Ram both went to boarding schools in the Gurukuls. They were not in the lap of luxury. They were taught like commoners. There were no additional privileges. This is how character building happens. When we remove the safety nets and let the children accept situations, they are thrown in obstacles, and let them overcome them. Let them swim the difficult tides. Let them tide over those difficult winds. They will overcome all this. Whatever difficulties I had as a student, or my children had as a student. So when I opened my institution, I didn't want those terracotta trousers and shirts. I wanted pure cotton, something to breathe. I wanted sport shoes so they could run around the campus, play sports, and be sitting in a classroom. Things that used to disturb me, I wanted to evolve and change. Small classrooms, friendly teachers, all that I look at is she enthusiastic? Is she ready to evolve? Is she ready to connect with your children? Those are good teachers, and that's what makes a good school, Devyani.
Thank you so much. It's truly, truly inspirational. We'll come back to you once again. Dr. Ameeta has to, I think, leave. So I have a very quick, is she there? Dr. Wattal, are you there? I don't know, because I had just got a text that she had to leave. So I don't think she is there. Anyways, she was with us and we had some great insights on the policy. And so moving on to you, one very important aspect which I want to dwell and I want to touch upon with you, because we've been having lots of discussions over this issue, is somewhere that in India, the person who is supposed to bring education to the primary students, primary school classrooms, undergoes just 2 years of teacher training, finishing class 12, and then supposed to have been prepared for teachers. For the secondary, it is probably 10 months program after an undergrad degree. Students, on the other hand, come from very socio-economic backgrounds, and they need much more than just the transacting or disseminating or completion of curriculum, or disseminating, I wouldn't say knowledge, I would say information. Considering that human relationships is at the core of teaching and demands high degree of social and emotional capacities and capabilities from the teacher, do you think India has designed a teacher education system which meets the aspirations that we have from education system today? Also, I'm deliberately raising this question is because our new education policy does have a feature where they say a lot would be, teacher education will be emphasized. And so what is your suggestions? And what do you think the gap is?
Okay, look, when a teacher joins a training program, say the trainer program, he becomes a student. Now, if you want him to be a teacher with a certain kind of a tool in his hand, or you want him to be a teacher with certain kind of qualities, then first you will have to introduce him to what you want him to do by doing it yourself, right? It's not that you start teacher on how to deliver something which is not delivered in the routine manner when he goes to the room. There is a complete disconnect between what the teacher is told to do in the teacher's training program and what the student is supposed to receive from him in the classroom. There's a total disconnect, complete disconnect. So what happens eventually? All these teachers' training programs, career development programs, professional development programs, both in the college and the university, the school and the university level, at the primary level, at the secondary level, at the higher secondary level, and also at the graduation or the post-graduation level. All these so-called training programs for the teachers, they end up in being nice little meets for people, except for the students, teachers training program, which is held as a part of a curriculum. What it does is it becomes a nice kind of a conference for you to meet other teachers and to very boringly listen to whatever is being thrown at you, because you have this kind of built-up inertia where you feel that whatever you are being told is not doable. So the doability factor is very important. The problem today is that whatever you are trying to do in the teachers' training programs has to be first related with the reality of the classroom. And the reality of the classroom does not only mean replicating the classroom. It also means that you are told how to disseminate information only where it is required and to get the best out of the student. How do you encourage the student to ask a question? When I went to England at the School of Oriental and African Studies, after my post-graduation, my teacher, Professor Julia Leslie, when I was looking one day I was very disturbed and she saw me and she said, "Why are you looking so disturbed?" I said, "Look, I have had a look at so many sources, but I'm not able to find something there which can lead me to a kind of building up the hypothesis which I had in my mind." So I said, okay, wait a minute. Can you ask one good question? So I said, yes. There's not one, there are many good questions. He said, look, one good question is equal to one PhD thesis. Now, that was such a comforting thing for me. Coming from Julia Leslie, one good question asked is equal to one good PhD thesis. Now, I do that with my students. And this is what we need to tell the teacher to do in the teachers' training programs, that you must encourage the students to ask questions and not expect the answers from you only, but help them find the answers. So don't tell them, as I said earlier, what to think. Tell them how to think, right? Give them a direction whereby they learn through experiences. They learn through whatever they're observing. And this is where the trainers also need to train the teachers in that mode. So when the mode changes, then there's a disconnect between what you learn and what you are trying to make others learn, right?
Absolutely. Right.
That's where the new education policy has very well, it has tried to tackle this issue Very well. And that is where a lot of emphasis has to be given to, again, not only hands-on for students, hands-on for teachers too. There's a massive reluctance on the part of the teachers to do anything new, simply because of the fear of delving into the unknown world. Well, we all have to do that. If you want to innovate, if you want to do something creative, and you want your students to think in a creative manner, in an innovative manner, then you have to instill that sense of confidence in your student. And here, who's your student? The teacher. So the trainer has to have confidence.
Yeah. Also, that one more thing, that the training has to be continuous and not like once in a year, just before or after the summer vacation. It has to be a continuous process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My next and my last question.
Ongoing process. The training
it has to be
process.
All right. My last question is to, and after that we have some audience questions. My last question is to Dr. Jayshree Periwal. And yeah, I would want, because now that you are an entrepreneur, now that you are in the other side of the table, with changing times that affect all aspects of teaching, what, according to you, would be the major changes in the education system that would be soon extremely necessary? And will it serve the multidimensional needs of a developing student, or rather a 21st century student? And how do you think this would affect the offline classes for when the schools open? You know, a lot of precautions and safety measures. So that brings a lot of responsibility and lot of, planning on the part of the, the management. So from that perspective as well, I just want you to very briefly touch upon.
So one thing has become very certain, that schools cannot be replaced by online schools. The human touch is important, but what has evolved has become a seamless integration of technology with the new schools that are emerging or will come up after the schools opened after these difficult times. Teachers cannot be replaced, but their style of teaching will be replaced.
Yes.
This is the reality that we must accept. Education technology that delivers great content and engages students and teachers has never been more important. The education systems, they've resisted changing for the last, for the last 150 years. Old structure will get extinct like the dinosaurs if they don't evolve. Yeah. The technology-able schools, we've in my own school, what we've done, that we've taken these online platforms like video conferencing, Jamboards, exam.net, polling booths, Kahoot, because we want to continue online pedagogies even after the pandemic. We'll have this learning.
Excellent.
You will see in another 5 years, we are going to have schools with e-textbooks, paperless schools. Everybody will be on their laptops and computers, because that is the necessity. And we must empower ourselves, whether we are school management or teachers or students, because this is going to happen. It's written on the wall. It's a new world order. In the last 5 months, what we've done to make this online a little more exciting, and to continue this, we've had cricketers like Harbhajan Singh coming and giving a little talk on fitness, Amish Tripathi discussing mythology, army generals discussing geopolitical strategies, psychologists like Dr. Zirak Marker came in to understand emotional well-being of children, which kind of gave us an opportunity. We can hire the best today And e-education is also going to make it available to everybody. It'll bring in students with disparity of wealth. They'll all come at par. It's going to become cheaper, more accessible to everybody. Use of artificial intelligence. We will have to personalize the learning experience of every child. We will have to discard this one-size-fits-all approach that is mostly followed in traditional schools. Learning will move from disciplinary to multidisciplinary to transdisciplinary. And now, unless we don't do this transdisciplinary style of teaching, we are not going to be successful. If you're studying about, say, water, Ameeta had just discussed this, we must talk about the Bawdis of Rajasthan, learn to understand, say, the water cycle in science, properties of water. In geography, you explore the civilization, why did they come around water bodies? Or in maths, you learn to measure the quantities of water and put into different formulas. In language, you write poems on monsoon. In art, you use watercolors and see how you can create masterpieces. So looking into the future, some of the most important skills that employers will be looking for will be creativity, communication, and collaboration, alongside empathy and emotional intelligence. This definitely change.
Very well said. A complete package. The 21st century critical skills will be the order of the day, and we may like it, we may don't like it. It is the push from the society, the global push that we will have to come into completely, as you said, a 360-degree turnaround and creation of a new world order. So our last segment is the Q&A round, which Supriya Kapoor will be taking it forward. Yes, Supriya.
Thank you so much. A huge thank you to all our panelists for their wise words. Before I move on to the question answer round, I would quickly request our panelists, if possible, to provide us with a quick 15-second bite on Edudevs and your experience of the webinar today. I'll start with Dr. Malay Neerav, please. Sir.
Well, it's been a learning experience. It's been a learning experience for me, because to listen to people from different fields and levels of education, Jayshree and Taji both. So I have been contemplating about how to establish a transitional kind of between one level and the other level. And this is going to be very helpful. Thank you for having invited me and giving this chance to me to be a part of this webinar.
The pleasure is all ours. Thank you so much. Jayshree ma'am, over to you.
So it's enriching, empowering, and educative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now we have a few questions from the audience, and then the first question is again for Dr. Malay Neerav, and this question is by Ms. Kumkum Srivastava from the audience. And she asks, what is the future of higher education in the next 5 years?
Well, I'm an eternal optimist, and therefore I don't see the future any worse than before. So this new education policy which has been introduced, and the new emphasis which is on experiential and so on, and the freedom of choice which is given to the students, so that they don't remain confined to a stereotypical circumscribed model which they have to do physics and chemistry and mathematics if they want to do physics, but they cannot do physics and philosophy. That kind of a thing we must get rid of, and that is what the NEP is going to do. So I can foresee a much brighter future if this whole thing is implemented properly.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed for that. And there's another, there's a question for Dr. Jayshree Periwal now from Dr. Amrita Chaudhary from the audience. What are your suggestions to deal with the digital divide? You've been working in Rajasthan in remote government schools where there is no facility of internet, and this may lead to a huge digital divide, as they say. How can private schools help this segment of students?
Totally, absolutely agreed that we've already started to feel this divide, but it becomes our moral responsibility, each one teach one. If we can all collaborate, if we can all make a difference and keep them into the mainstream fold, we'll be doing service to ourselves, because we are getting an opportunity to empower somebody else, and of course for the entire country. But technology is going to get cheaper, devices are going to be more accessible, and you will see, because only when there are difficulties that we find solutions. So you'll find cheaper gadgets, and you'll see the whole country getting empowered in the near future. This came very suddenly. So there is a divide at the moment, but this is not going to last forever. We are going to see this getting bridged very, very quickly.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the answer. Now, before concluding the webinar, I would like to emphasize on the contest that we held, The Teacher in Me. This contest aimed at providing teachers with a platform to put forward their teaching philosophy and in turn form a wonderful and enriching community. We were overwhelmed with the number of responses we received and the varied philosophies of our fellow educator, and it was not easy to judge. Accordingly, I would like to announce the winners. So for the first prize, we have Ms. Niharikan Vempati from Sanskriti Global School, Visakhapatnam. Our second prize goes to Ms. Meenu Chandok from State Anandram Jaipurla School. Our third prize goes to Ms. Manisha Khanna, Vice Principal, Mount Olympic School. I would also like to, congratulations to all the winners. I would also like to mention that since we had so many entries and such wonderful philosophies, we decided to have 2 special mention awards. And these awards go, the award goes to Pooja Kopati from Lotus Valley International and Ms. Sakshi Bavlani from Sanskriti School. A big congratulations to all the winners and all the participants. Thank you so much for making the contest and sharing your philosophies on teaching and enriching this community. One of our team members will contact you for the prizes. Thank you. And just to conclude, I would now want to ask Devyani ma'am to just give us a brief vote of thanks before we conclude the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Supriya. But before giving a vote of thanks, I would just a little bit like to touch upon the organization and the kind of work Edudevs hopes and aspires to do for the society. So at Edudevs, the primary objective is to facilitate the skill-based development of the young educators, to bridge the gap between their pedagogical theory and its application in a real classroom environment, which greatly we feel impacts the learning ability of the student. In addition, the team at Edudevs aims to carry out a complete assessment of educational institutes and provide them with evaluation and assessment, helping them identify their school health and take them forward from the journey to good to great. Lastly, Edudevs aims to empower education by providing them with effective training methodologies, design a holistic curriculum, and facilitate self-evaluation and overall development of the institutes and of the educators. With this, we come to the end of the session, though the session was so enriching, and I think I got so carried away because with the words of wisdom from Dr. Malay Neerav to Dr. Ameeta M to Dr. Jayshree Periwal, who is in her themselves an epitome of inspiration to, I think, to everybody, all of them. Well, just touch upon Dr. Ameeta's philosophy on creating, fighting the challenges of routinization of charisma and reaching out to the last child in the classroom. A tip to each and every teacher. To Dr. Neerav, who said that the relevance cannot be undermined, and he definitely touched upon to work and beware of fossilization and the prevailing inertia. So definitely this is something where we will take it out and touch upon in the society, that teachers need to develop their own potential, enhance their own skills, and get into the newer roles in the 21st century. To Dr. Jayshree Periwal, who did speak about so much about what she is being doing, her actions and her philosophy completely resonate when she said that the 4 C's, the development of the 4 C's, that is critical thinking, communication, collaboration, should be the order of the day. And I was really impressed that even this time of pandemic, she used it so well, where she said that she exposed her students and teachers to industry experts in various walks of life. Hats off to you, ma'am. And so, ma'am, it was a pleasure having you all. We are completely humbled with your presence, and I'm sure our audience will have an immense takeaway from the webinar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.